So today we are looking at rearranging formula. The question we're starting with is starting simple. Rearrange the following equation to make y the subject. That means it's going to look like y equals something, and I'll show you what that means. The first thing you always got to do when you're rearranging a formula is to ask yourself what is happening to y at the moment. At the moment x is being added to y. So how do we get rid of that x? What's the opposite of adding on x to something? It's to take x away. So we're taking x away. But to make the equation, the formula balanced, we've got to take x away from both sides. And that's what our answer is going to look like. We've made y the subject, which means y is on its own, and then we have y equals something. And here, what's happening to x? What's happening to y? Well, 2x is being minused from it. What's the opposite of minus 2x? Add 2x. So we add the 2x to get rid of that minus 2x, because plus 2x minus 2x makes 0. They cancel each other out. But to be fair, we've got to do the same to the other side as well. So that's going to be our answer. Okay, we're trying to make y the subject still. Okay, so y is being multiplied by 2. Then we're subtracting x and adding 2. So what we've got to do is just get y on its own. So the first thing we're going to do is get rid of the minus x. Then we're going to get rid of the plus 2. Now we've got 2y. That means 2 multiplied by y. What's the opposite of multiplying something by 2? Dividing it by 2. So we've got to divide it by 2. And we're going to divide the other side by 2 as well, just to balance the equation. So we have y multiplied by 2 divided by 2. These two cancel each other out. Take any number, multiply it by 2, divide it by 2, you end up with the number itself on its own. And so that's our answer. If it was a straight line graph question and you were asked to find the gradient and the y-intercept, you'd have x minus 2 over 2. That makes x over 2, which is half of x, minus 2 over 2, which is 1. So then we'd have the gradient and the y-intercept. But normally you don't have to do that. When you're just rearranging, you can just leave it in that form over there. You only do this when you're trying to find the gradient and the y-intercept. Okay, rearrange the formula to make v the subject. Here. So at the moment, what's happening to v is it's being multiplied by 3, then t is being added to it, and then it's being divided by 5. Okay, so fractions are difficult to work with. So the first thing we're going to do is get rid of the fraction. This means divide by 5. So what's the opposite of divide by 5? Just pause the video and see if you can do this one. Okay, so the opposite of divide by 5 is times by 5. So we have to multiply both sides by 5 to get rid of the divide by 5. So now we have this side, e has been multiplied by 5. 5e equals 3v plus t. So v is being multiplied by 3, then we're adding t. So there's two ways we could go about it, and one way makes our life more difficult and one way makes it easier. Okay, the way that makes it more difficult would be to divide by 3, because yes, we'd get rid of that times by 3, but this would then be divided by 3. We'd have t over 3, so we'd have another difficult thing to deal with there. And when we are rearranging, it's always a good idea to think about BIDMAS. So what's happening to the v? The v is being multiplied by 3, then we're adding t. If we're trying to reverse that, we're trying to reverse the multiply by 3 times by add t, we go BIDMAS in reverse. So the first thing we're going to do is take away t from both sides. Left with this. Okay, now v is being multiplied by 3. So the opposite of that is dividing by 3. And we are left with that. And the correct way of writing it is to put the subject on the left like this. Okay, have a go at some of these. Pause the video, have a go at the ones that look like they might be challenging to you. And the answers are going to come up. Okay, here they are. Okay, make t the subject of the formula. Now, t is being squared, then that's being multiplied by a, then y is being added to it. That's BIDMAS. Okay, so we're going to go BIDMAS in reverse. So if we go BIDMAS in reverse, we're going to do addition or subtraction first. So we're going to get rid of that y. Okay, we're taking away y from both sides, so that y disappears and it reappears there as a minus y, which is what we have here. Okay, we have t squared times a. So BIDMAS in reverse, the indices come later. First we're going to get rid of that multiplication. Okay, so we divide that side by a, we divide that side by a, so we have t squared equals x minus y over a. So what's the reverse of squaring something? The inverse of that, this is what we're looking for. We're looking for the inverse. The inverse of squaring something is square rooting it. Okay, take any number, square it, square root it, you end up with the number you started with. Squaring and square rooting are the reverse of each other, so they cancel each other out. We've had to square root both sides to keep our equation balanced, and so we end up with this. So that's the answer. We've made t the subject of this formula. Okay, we can look at some of the red ones. Pause the video and try this first one, and then let's take a look. Okay, so BIDMAS in reverse, we're looking at the addition first, so we're taking that away from both sides. That's what we get. Okay, now we have k divided by l. It's always hard when we have something in the denominator that we need to work out, so we need to get that out of the fraction. So how can we get rid of that being a fraction? What's the opposite of k being divided by l? Is being multiplied by l. Then we need to multiply both sides. Okay, what's important is we need to multiply this whole side by l. We're multiplying this whole side by l, so we need to multiply this whole side by l. How do we take this whole thing and multiply it by l? We bracket it off and then we multiply it by l here. Okay, now what's l is being multiplied by j minus m. Okay, we don't need to expand this because it's a bit simpler than that. All we need to do is get rid of a multiplication by j minus m. What's the opposite of multiplying by j minus m? It's dividing by j minus m. Okay, so these two cancel, and we're left with L equals K over J minus M. Okay, try this one. Okay, similar one. Take away B from both sides. A take away B equals K over N. We don't like having our subject in the denominator, so we always multiply out to get things out of the denominator. Then they're easier to work with. Multiplying this whole side by N. Okay, N is being multiplied by A minus B. So the opposite of that is divide by A minus B. These two cancel each other out. We have N equals K over A minus B. There you go. Okay, we get these questions where we're trying to make N the subject and N appears twice. So that's a bit difficult to work with. We have N attached to C and N attached to A. So how do we get rid of a multiplication by A and N being multiplied by C here at the same time? Well, what we need to do here is we need to factorize, okay? So N is a common factor. Single bracket factorization. If you don't know how to do this, it is something you need to look up, factorizing, okay? So hopefully you can see we've taken N out as the factor. Okay, so we had N being multiplied by C and N being multiplied by A. We had Cn plus An. Now we've got the same thing, it's just that we've got N on the outside of the bracket and then C plus A inside the bracket. And now we can simply divide both sides by C plus A. Okay, so the C plus A, they cancel each other out. Okay, these cancel each other out, and our answer is n equals bx over c plus a. Okay. Again, we need to make b the subject. B appears twice. So let's get all the b's onto the same side of the equal sign. Okay, so we're going to add cb to both sides. Okay, that minus cb is going to disappear from there. And it's going to reappear here as a plus cb. Okay, so again, we've got the b's. We need to factorize that. B is the common factor. So that goes outside the brackets and we're left with this. Okay, so the inverse of multiplying by a plus c is dividing by a plus c. So we divide both sides by a plus c. We're left with b equals dx over a plus c. Okay, now I want you to pause the video and try this one. Remember what I said about numbers being in the denominator and how that makes our life difficult and how we want to get rid of numbers in the denominator? Okay, so what we need to do is multiply both sides by n plus 1. Okay, that multiplication by n plus 1 is the opposite of that division by n plus 1. Okay, so we've got rid of it from the denominator. Now we're taking a and we're multiplying a by n plus 1. How do we multiply a by two terms? That is going to look like this. So we've multiplied a by n plus 1. So we're taking this and multiplying it by a, and we've just got the x plus n on the other side. That was there before, but now the denominator has been removed, and now that's what we have. Okay, so what we need to do now is we need to expand that bracket. Okay, we need to expand that bracket to get n out of the bracket. We need n on its own, so we need to get it out of that bracket first. So that's going to look like this. Okay, now we need to get all the n's onto one side. So that plus n, we're minusing n from both sides, so it's going to reappear as a minus on the other side. That plus a, we're taking a away from both sides, so that plus a is going to reappear as a minus a on the other side. So kind of the n and the a are switching around, and as they cross over the equal sign, the signs change because we've balanced. So it looks like that. Okay, now we can factorize that. We have a times n minus n. N is the common factor, so n comes out, and we put in the bracket, we put a minus 1, because that makes a n. The n multiplied by the minus 1 is going to make minus n. So we have a n minus n equals x minus a. And now it's simple. We just got to get rid of that multiplication by a minus 1. And that's what our final formula is going to look like when n has been made to be the subject. Okay, so hopefully that's been useful to you. If you need any more help with that, you might need some help with factorizing if you don't understand that, but expanding of brackets. There's various different things you need to know before you can do this confidently. So my advice is go through the PowerPoint again and make sure that you can do all the individual questions, and then just double check that you've done them correctly at the end. Okay.